Hello, hello. I'm very excited for today's podcast episode today because I know that is something that a lot of listeners struggle with. And it is such a frustrating feeling. So let's just call it out. 200 view jail is so real, right? It is so frustrating to put time and energy and effort into Instagram, finally post that reel that you spent way too long overthinking, and then see that it gets 243 views again, right? I know that feeling. It can feel like Instagram is hiding your content, or worse, maybe you even start to question, is it me? Maybe it's not the algorithm after all. Maybe my content just sucks. And today I'm going to walk you through why your reels aren't getting traction because the algorithm is not out to get you. There are real reasons why this happens for people. And we're going to more importantly talk about what you can do instead so that you can get out of 200 view jail without, burning yourself out or making yourself crazy in the process. And if you're nodding along, I also want to tell you about my Reels membership, which is going to be an amazing way to help you get out of 200 view jail and never feel stuck again. So more on that later. Before we dive in, I do want to do a quick level set here about like what amount of views you should expect on Instagram for your reels. So, oftentimes I'll hear from therapists like, hey, I'm posting reels. I've been doing this for a while now and I'm just not getting really good views. Do you think that something's wrong? Do I need the Reels membership? Do I need PPA, etc.? And I'll go and I'll look at their profile and they actually have a decent number of views on Instagram. And so, yes, maybe there's a bigger problem there of like those views aren't converting into followers or into clients. And that's certainly something I can help you with. But I think oftentimes we kind of put too much pressure on the amount of views that we're getting, and the expectation is way, way, way too high for what is reasonable and normal. So, the average views that you should be getting on your reels are 8 to 10% of your follower size. And this is according to influencer platforms who have aggregated data. So let's say you have 1,000 followers. 8 to 10% of that is 80 to 100 views per Instagram reel. And I know, right, many of us, myself included, strive to be exceptional and we strive to be above average. But I think that that is really helpful context to share what is normal versus what is failing. So if you are somebody that is brand new to Instagram and you have 200 followers and you are getting 200 views on your reels, that doesn't mean that you are in jail or you've done something totally wrong. It means that you have a brand new Instagram account, right? You're actually reaching 100% of your follower size with those reels. And so I think that that is just like helpful context to share of, what's normal and what is failing. Most therapists in the Reels membership have views that are way above this, right? On most of their reels. And I do think that that's kind of needed, right? If you get 1,000 followers and you're still only getting 80 views on all of your reels, it's going to be quite hard to grow your account. And so we kind of do need those exceptional results in order to grow at like a faster pace and move forward and not have it take forever, right? But I always think that this level set is important because we want to look at things with context. Context matters. And so, if we see something that gets lower views than normal, I really want you to ask yourself, did this reel flop and did it do horrible? Or did your other reels just do really amazing? Were they just really exceptional results? Because the end of the day is, not every reel that you're going to do is going to be exceptional. Not every reel is going to be viral for you. Not every reel is going to reach, 30, 50, 100% of your audience. And so just kind of like realizing, sometimes things do flop and we do need to sort of like change direction and strategy there a bit. But sometimes it's like you're really doing good with a lot of your content and something else just like sort of average and doesn't mean that it was a bad reel or you did a bad job. Okay, so now let's talk about maybe that's not the case and you actually legitimately are in 200 view jail, meaning that your reels are never getting above 200 views, you are not getting good engagement, you're not getting good likes, your followers are not growing, you're definitely not getting clients from Instagram. If this is the case, I want to talk a little bit about some of the common reasons why I see therapists get stuck in this trap of not really getting views from reels. Because at the end of the day, reels, the best part about them is that the Instagram algorithm prioritizes them, right? You're going to get way more views on your reels than on your static carousel posts. And so if we're not getting good views on the reels, then it's going to be really hard to grow on Instagram. So the first reason why I see therapists stuck in 200 view jail is that your hooks are way too vague, right? The reels are not flopping because the algorithm is out to get you. They're flopping because nobody is stopping scrolling to watch your reel. And that is telling the algorithm that people don't like your reel, they don't care about it. And so therefore the algorithm stops showing it to people. The Instagram algorithm's entire job is to keep people on the app more, right? So if people were liking your content, if they were engaging it, if they were watching it, the algorithm would show it to more people. It's in its best interest, right? And so when we see your reels getting stuck with not that many views, that's a good sign that people are not stopping their scroll and they're not actually watching and engaging with your reel. So I want to give an example of a vague hook. It might be, let's talk about anxiety. That's pretty vague, right? Like at least we're being a little niche specific there and we're using the word anxiety, but we're not really saying anything and we're not really like showing your authority there. We're not telling people how you're going to help them. We're not piquing interest. And so instead, maybe another example of how to make this more specific and more compelling, and this is an example from the Reels membership, is doing like a talking head reel where you're talking face to camera and say, I've been an anxiety therapist for 7 years now. And the most common reminder I give my clients is blank, right? That's a lot more interesting, right? We're telling people who you are. We're telling people that you're an anxiety therapist. We're giving yourself some credibility with the amount of years, and we're piquing interest with the most common reminder you give your clients, right? Being able to speak in that way, being able to frame content in a way that is specific and that captures people's attention in those first like 3 to 5 seconds is key. Now, in order to do this, you really need to know, what are your clients saying? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And when you can nail that, you are going to do so well in all of your marketing. So I wanted to give an example. Actually, this is a little on the fly. So the other day I was at the airport and I was outlining some podcast episode outlines. And I had just finished the outline for this episode actually. And I had one more I wanted to do that day. And I took a picture of just like my laptop with a blank screen on it at the airport lounge. And I put up a question box on my Instagram stories and said, I'm working on some new podcast episode outlines. Like, what do you want me to talk about in the podcast? Think of this as a free training for you. And somebody shared exactly, I'm actually going to pull this up and read it to you. So somebody said, why you're stuck in 200 view jail and not growing a following. And that to me was just like the perfect confirmation that I know my people. I had already come up with this podcast episode, the title, the outline, and I know exactly the struggles that the therapists that I work with are speaking with, right? They're dealing with. I know exactly how they're calling it, right? So I'm not just like, how to get more views on Instagram. I'm saying, how to get out of 200 view jail and grow your following, because that's what my clients are saying. That's what the people I help are saying. That's what I hear you complaining about in coaching calls or, when you're DMing me and deciding if one of my programs is right for you. And so I think you need to challenge yourself to really listen to your therapy clients in the same way and to figure out what are the words that they're saying and how can we be way more specific in your content. So the second mistake that I really see therapists making that's causing them to get low views is that you are educating like you're, presenting at a conference or teaching a CEU webinar or something, not like you are talking to a human. And talking to a human, being able to be conversational, being able to use the words that your clients use is really going to be a game changer, right? So we don't want to do a hook of just like, here are 5 signs of anxiety. It's not super compelling again, right? It's not, what is keeping people up at night. It's not like specific either. And really, when you're sharing those 5 signs of anxiety, if you are being quite personal and you're sharing like the inner thoughts and the feelings and the worries, maybe that could be okay content. I think we could do a stronger hook there, but at least the content itself is strong. Oftentimes where I see therapists mess up is they get really psychoeducational and they start listing things that are literally found in the DSM and like racing thoughts or whatever. And that's just not going to speak to people because it's not how your clients are describing anxiety to you in session. It's not how they're putting words to that feeling. It's not how they're telling their girlfriends at brunch that, they've been struggling and they're thinking about seeing a therapist. We really want to use those client words. And so instead, we might make this more specific with, a hook like you're the go-to friend, the one who always keeps it together, and you're secretly falling apart, right? So we're actually painting the picture. What does it look like to be someone with anxiety? Or maybe if we want to go like signs and symptoms, we're being more specific. And so we're saying, hidden signs of high functioning anxiety that you hope no one notices, right? And so we're kind of piquing interest there and saying, these are the hidden things. These are not like the things you can find in a textbook. These are the things that, show up that you feel inside that you're not sharing with others, that you're kind of embarrassed and ashamed of, that you hope no one notices. or being specific and saying high functioning anxiety so they know like kind of the specific flavor there. And that is where your content is going to shine, right? So like kind of stop creating content for your peers and really go beyond psychoeducation, go beyond the content that, you know, your clients could find on Google or they could ask ChatGPT for. Because if you are at 200 views, if you are stuck there, you're probably making reels that are more so designed to like impress other therapists and show off your expertise and how much you know, and are really kind of inadvertently confusing and boring your ideal clients, right? And so we really just need to talk more like a human, be more human, and really show up more like you show up in session versus, you know, really trying to show up from this educational place online. Kind of in that same vein, the third mistake that I see therapists making is that you are being too polished, too careful, or too neutral, right? And so, you know, one place where I think this happens is therapists will often re-record every line to get it just right. And then therefore they're spending forever on reels. And then they end up just like posting once a week maximum because they were so caught up on exactly the right script, the perfect outfit, the perfect trending audio, the perfect filming setup, all of it. But at the end of the day, reels are not about perfection. They are about connection, right? Your content should feel like people are on a FaceTime call with you, or they're like peeking into your office and seeing you on the couch or sipping your morning cup of coffee, right? They want to feel like they're hanging out with a real human, not listening to a TED talk of some like super polished authority speaker on the subject. And I've seen this happen a lot with therapists when they first join the Reels membership. They'll have been posting for months prior, you know, showing up on Instagram, coming up with their own content ideas, but not really getting results. Their audience is growing really slow. They're not getting any clients. And the reason is because they keep posting these very professional, very informative pieces of content. And while that content might be brilliant, it might be accurate, it might be helpful, it's not coming from a place of validation. And that's really the key difference here, right? The second that therapists join the Rails membership and they start having fun with Instagram and they start positioning this content from a place of like validation, connection, helping people feel seen and heard, which is exactly what the prompts are designed to do, their views quadruple, right? And clients start to book intro calls. And this happens because people want to connect with a real human on social media. And they definitely want to work with a therapist who's a real human on social media. That is why like Instagram is such an effective marketing tool for therapists, because it allows you to show up. It allows you to be less polished than a website or a Psych Today profile would. It allows you to build connection and community with your clients and rapport before they even enter the therapy room. And so we really want to create content that actually does that, right? If your Instagram content is just as buttoned up, just as polished, just as informative as your website or as a blog post, it's not really going to be doing you much good, right? The whole point of Instagram is that it feels so much more human, it feels so much more casual. And so really I would challenge you to like loosen up a little bit. Like wear the clothes that you would normally wear in session. Again, film the silly B-roll sitting on your couch, do a lip syncing reel, stutter through your words a little bit. Like that's okay. Let people get to see the human. Okay, the last mistake I really see therapists making that's causing them to get stuck in 200 view jail is not posting enough for the algorithm or your audience to even know who you are, right? So if you are only posting, I don't know, twice a month, Instagram has nowhere near enough data to figure out who to show your content to. Again, Instagram's whole goal is to keep people on the app. They want to work with you, not against you. But in order to do that, Instagram needs to understand what sort of people like your content. Who is going to engage with it? Who is going to want to view it later? Who's going to find it and binge through your entire profile and spend 10 minutes on it, right? That's who Instagram wants to show your content to. But if you're only posting twice a month, Instagram's not getting that data, which is what they're looking for to understand what type of people should they put your reels in front of. And so you really need to post more frequently for Instagram to have a good idea of how to categorize your content and who to show it to. Plus, the other side of this coin is your audience isn't seeing you enough to build trust, right? I want you to think about like your own behavior on social media today. Depending on how early or late in the day that you're listening to this, you may or may not have already spent a decent amount of time scrolling, but you've probably consumed, I don't know, 50, 100 reels already today, right? Like that is how our brains work. We sit there and we mindlessly scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. And that's content from 50 to 100 different people who are just, some of them you're just looking at it for 1 second and deciding it's not for you. Some you're watching all the way through. Maybe some you go down a little rabbit hole, whatever, right? But there's a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff being thrown at you. And so if you're not posting consistently, your audience isn't even going to remember who you are, even if they've chosen to follow you, right? And you want people to be like, oh, like Sarah, yeah, she's the grief therapist that I've loved following. Or, oh, Kelly, yeah, I love how she helps me like market my private practice, right? You want people to know who you are and what you do. And that takes repetition. It takes people seeing you consistently to build that trust, to remember who you are. And so, it is really important that you are posting multiple times a week about the same niche, about the same topic in order to build that trust with your audience, right? And so that's something where I really see a lot of Reels membership therapists thrive, because they're getting the system that gives them the direction, the content ideas, the trending audios, the templates. They are getting 4 Reels ideas every single week. And so it's making it much easier for them to show up consistently. And that consistency in and of itself is going to help you really build a closer connection with your people, and it's going to help the algorithm get on your side. So if you are resonating with any of this, if you're like, yes, I'm making these mistakes, I'm entering a few jail, I want to share a little bit about what you can do instead, because I want to leave you with some positive things. So we're going to use real person hooks. So not how to manage anxiety, because that is boring, right? Instead, we're going to say something like, POV, it's Sunday night, you're lying in bed, and you suddenly feel like you've wasted the whole weekend, right? And then give some tips or whatever about anxiety and Sunday scaries. And you could do that like in the caption. But so we really want to be really more specific. Do you hear the difference there between how to manage anxiety? A little boring, I'll probably keep scrolling. And maybe a B-roll where you are, in your pajamas and you're making your bed, and it says on top, POV, it's Sunday night, you're lying in bed and you suddenly feel like you've wasted the whole weekend. Then in the caption, we can go ahead and provide, that psychoeducation. We could talk about why people with anxiety have Sunday scaries and, how therapy can help. But we really want to capture that attention and be specific and speak to like our clients' concerns. Another example of like a real person hook versus a not so good one. So maybe a not so good hook would be, let's talk about boundaries. And then maybe a better way to do this would be being specific with, what does this look like? Why do people want to even set boundaries to begin with? And so maybe our hook is, if you say yes to things and immediately regret it, this is for you. And then we share, a formula for setting boundaries, or a tip for setting boundaries, or a specific script that people can use to set a boundary and say, let me think about that, or whatever. But we really want to be a lot more specific and human with our content. And, I save content ideas all the time, right? You could do this in a notes app. I DM stuff to myself on Instagram. You can make a Google Doc, but you really want to pay attention to what are the things that clients are bringing up? What are their specific struggles? What are the phrases that they use, the words they use? What are DMs you're getting from your audience asking you questions or saying that they resonate with things? How about your comments section? Like, how are people referring to things? Look at the comment section of like larger creators if you're not getting a lot of comments from people that are not therapists. Even text convos with friends that are kind of like in your niche. Save all of that somewhere so you have it to plug into Reels copy later, and you can really be good at speaking in your client's own words. The other thing we want to do is make sure that you are definitely niche down, right? So that can be a huge, huge, huge improvement that you can make to your content if you are currently in 200 view jail. Niche down and talk to one person for the next 60 days and report back to me and tell me how much better results you get from Instagram in terms of views, followers, clients, referrals, all of the things, right? You need to speak to one person and one person only on your Instagram. Maybe it's anxious new moms, or the people pleaser, or the guy in his 20s navigating his first breakup. But we need to be really, really specific. I have very, very, very rarely seen people become too niched. I think that is not something you should be worrying about. Really, the goal here is to be as specific as possible, because it is going to make you so much more relatable. It's going to make people resonate. And there are probably still literally hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people on Instagram with that same struggle, thousands of people in your state who you could work with that same struggle. And it really is just important to niche down and be really specific with who you're speaking to. not just in one piece of content, but in all of your content, right? So those people who find you from that one reel that was specific, go to your bio and they see that you're speaking to the same person. They watch a few other reels on your profile, they see that you're speaking to the same person. That's going to be what builds your following and what also fills your caseload. Another thing that we can do to sort of break this pattern of not getting very many views is to share from a personal lens. So I'm going to actually read some examples of content of mine that I've shared from a personal lens, because I think that this is a big shift in how Instagram has changed in the past year or two, right? So like back in 2020, a lot of Instagram content was phrased with the word you in it, right? We were all taught like, let's talk to people and say you, let's use you in our hook. Let's use the word you in the first line of our caption. Let's like really talk to people. And I think that, somewhere along the line, it sort of started to feel like Instagram creators were talking at us instead of with us. And so now I've really noticed when I scroll my explore feed, when I scroll my homepage, the content that's doing really well is shared more from a personal lens. And so, as therapists, of course, we're still going to share some content where we're speaking directly to our clients, but if we can share, one or two pieces of content a week from your own personal lens, it's going to be so much more connective. And I'm going to give you, some examples because it doesn't need to be a lot of self-disclosure as a therapist. POV, putting that in front of it can actually be a great way to like share without it being really about you, but it could still kind of be from like a personal lens. So anyways, I'll give some examples there too. But, here's a content that I shared. It was a reel and I was just kind of like looking exasperated. And it said in quotes, "You're always anxious about something." And then underneath it said, "God forbid a girl care about what's happening to the other human beings in this dystopian country." Right. And so that's me sharing from me, right? It's not like, oh, if you always feel anxious about the political climate in this country, XYZ. Instead, it's really personal, it's really conversational, it's really casual. I'm telling my clients I get them. I shared another reel recently where I was just sort of like putting some oranges in a bowl on my table. And I had some text on top that said, "Years ago, I came across someone's post that said, 'I've never felt proud after my achievements, only relieved. And I haven't looked at life the same since.'" And so, by me saying years ago, it really takes off some of this pressure of self-disclosure of like telling my clients that I'm in it and struggling with the same things that they are every day. It feels like past tense, right? The old phrase, share from the scar, not from the wound. Um, and the quote was really specific in like, this is something that my clients who have high functioning anxiety totally, totally, totally resonate with. And so by sharing it as, years ago, I came across a post that said this and I hadn't looked at life the same. It just makes it a lot more personal than just sharing a quote on screen, right? It makes it connecting with my audience. I did another reel where I was lip syncing and it said my biggest pet peeve is people saying, "I know exactly how you feel." And then in the caption, I gave other examples of things that you could say instead, right? And so I think like the old 2020 way of doing that would be making a reel that said like, if you love someone with anxiety, you need to stop telling them, "I know exactly how you feel." And that's okay. Like it's still specific content, it's still niche down. But by me saying my biggest pet peeve is people saying this, it just frames the same piece of content from a more personal lens. And so I hope that these examples go to show you that you can still share the same kind of content. What's really important and necessary is to spend time thinking about how we're framing the hook. And that's exactly what I do for you inside the Reels membership is like, how can we take these same content ideas and apply them in a way that is working on Instagram now? Right? That is going to feel connected, that is going to help you build trust with your audience, to build that know, like, and trust factor. Because people don't want to be talked at anymore, right? They want to have an actual conversation. They want you to self-disclose a little bit in a way, of course, that feels appropriate. So if this self-disclosure thing feels like a no for you, for sure, I want you to try a POV hook. I know I mentioned that a few minutes ago, but I think POV hooks are really helpful because they can be a little bit more vague of, is she saying that this is her or is she acting as a client, right? Is she like putting on that point of view? And so it can feel safer. I wanted to share two examples from therapists in the Reels membership who I think did a great job with POV hooks. And these are from, prompts included in the membership. So Jordan is a therapist for moms, and I'll go ahead and link both these reels in the show notes. But she got 1.8 million views on this reel that said, POV, you've been looking for a mom therapist that says, hell yes, I know what rage feels like. You're not alone. And you find my account. And this is so easy. It's like a 5-second reel. She's smiling at her desk and she has that text on screen. And it tells her audience, like, I see you. I know who you are. Soul is an OCD therapist and she got 600,000 views on this reel. The audio is just lip syncing, like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it's that audio if you've seen it. If not, then I'm sorry for embarrassing myself there. And so she's lip syncing the audio and the text on screen says, POV, your therapist asks how often you try to get your needs met with your partner through criticism, nitpicking, or lecturing them like they're a bad student, right? And so again, this is an example like, maybe Soul has OCD herself. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe this is something that she's been through. Maybe it's something she's worked on with her own therapy, or maybe she's just kind of like demonstrating what it's like to be her client. It doesn't quite matter, but it just feels so much more personal when it's framed in that way. And it's really specific, right? So this is not, what's listed in the DSM for relationship OCD or something, right? We're saying, how often you try to get your needs met with your partner through criticism, nitpicking, or lecturing them like they're a bad student. Like that is something that the right person is going to be like, oh yeah, she just called me out. That is so me. And, Soul got 600,000 views from this, which is amazing. So I would really, really encourage you to kind of share from that more personal lens. 2 more tips for you for things that we can do to get out of this 200 view jail. So embracing messy action. I know this is hard. I know that there's a lot of therapists out there, myself included, who are perfectionists, but it is so much better to be consistent and messy than it is to not show up at all, right? Because you're too focused on like trying to be perfect. And so, I'm going to give an example of a piece of content that I did actually. So this is from July 7th, 2024. You can find it on both my accounts, so like a year ago now. But it was horrible lighting on a plane. I didn't even wipe my camera lens off, so the video almost looks blurry. It's like not very good filming quality at all. But it got 1.8 million views, and it was such a simple reel. And I thought of this idea because I was like literally going and sitting on the plane and had this thought to myself. And I just like propped up my phone and kind of made like a sassy thinking face on the camera, added some trending audio, and called it a day. And so the text on the reel says, you're a therapist on a plane and the person next to you asks what you do for work. What do you do? And then I give 3 options. A, pretend you didn't hear them and avoid eye contact. B, make up a fake job and pray for 0 follow-up questions. C, give them free therapy for the next 4 hours. And this got 1.8 million views, right? I could have been like, oh no, this isn't the perfect piece of content. I didn't get a good angle on the plane. I'm sitting in coach. I didn't wipe off my thing. My outfit doesn't look good. I didn't put makeup on this morning. But I was like, no, I like this. I have this idea. I'm on a plane. It's actually going to be really like good content that I'm sitting on a plane when I'm filming this. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I got 1.8 million views, right? So embrace the messy action. Do not wait till something is perfect. When you have a good idea or when you're presented with one, go out there and do it. So last thing is we want to use trends, but we want to make them yours, right? So every week inside the Reels membership, I will tell you exactly what's trending and how to adapt it to your therapy niche. And this is how you build momentum without starting from scratch every time. Because we cannot just like do a funny lip syncing thing. We need to figure out, how does that funny lip syncing thing apply to my ideal client? How does this funny B-roll show my ideal client that I get them, that I see them, that I understand them? Right. And that's where the Reels membership comes in. That's where, I give you not just the trending audio, but I'm giving you the script of what do you put on screen. I'm giving you examples of what that looks like for different niches so you can really plug it in and say, okay, I know my clients best. I'm going to go ahead and, plug this in and put it here. And it's going to take me 10 minutes and it's going to be amazing. And when you do this, when you figure out how to actually just take prompts and use them to create content differently than how you've been showing up, that is how you get out of 200 view jail, my friends, right? One therapist inside the membership DM'd me the other day and she said, so what do you do when you're getting an overwhelming amount of intro calls on your calendar? That is the problem I want you to have. And that's what's going to happen when you shift how you show up on Instagram, when you take a different approach to your marketing than just psychoeducation and really figure out, how can I create content in a way that the algorithm likes, that people engage with, and that really makes people feel seen, heard, and understood. Because let's be clear, 200 view jail isn't about the algorithm being evil. It's about not having the right Instagram strategy. And strategy is a skill that you can learn. And it's something you don't even need to learn, right? It's just something you can implement when it is presented to you. So if you're stuck, it's not because you are bad at Instagram content, but maybe the Instagram content you're creating is not so good. And we can kind of shift, like repackage the information that you're putting into a different way that is going to align better with the type of content that people want to consume. So put in the reps, get unstuck, use these ideas, join the Reels membership. Your future clients are waiting for you.